Views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of Natural Bridges Media or KSQD's staff, volunteers, or underwriters.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Moment of Truth, your occasional program reporting on the national scene across the United States as we face incredible legislation impacting the LGBTQ plus community across the United States, plus people of color, plus women, plus Indigenous people. That's like most of us, okay? So I think we need to be paying very close attention at this time. On Clean Feed with us, we have two wonderful, amazing human beings. Autumn Person, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, we can hear you loud and clear. And also Liam Borg, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Autumn and Liam have been very busy. They are both with Project Caerus in Florida, which is an organization that's relatively new that has just formed to organize students across the state to resist the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation happening and coming down from the governor's office, Governor DeSantis, who may be our presidential nominee for the GOP, which is kind of a horrifying thought as far as I'm concerned. There is a march planned for March 31st. Autumn, I believe that you're the founder of Project Caerus. I wonder if you could talk about what is happening on March 31st in Florida and across the country.
Yes, so basically, we're working with another organization called Queer Youth Assemble. And basically, Queer Youth Assemble they're similar to us. They're mainly student-led. They have a lot of youth in there. And what we're doing is we're working with them because they are also planning national marches on the 31st.
Okay.
And we were really iffy on a date at first, and we had to change it because it was too soon for us, and we were getting plenty of attention. So we wanted to actually give us and everyone else enough time to prepare. And we thought that the 31st would be perfect because not only is it Trans Visibility Day, but it's also the date where there'll be national walkouts and protests across the nation. So we thought we would connect with them and start stuff like that.
Okay, great. So this is happening March 31st, I believe, at 2 p.m. across the state, at schools across the state.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
From 2 p.m. to 3:30.
And what is the name again of the national organization? Let's slow that down a little bit so everyone can hear.
So the name of the organization is called Queer Youth Assemble.
Okay. Queer Youth Assemble. Is there a website for that group?
There is actually. That would be at queeryouthassemble.org.
Okay.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, great. And what I want to do, Autumn, I'll start with you, and then we'll definitely go to Liam and give Liam a chance to jump in here. But I spoke with you because I saw this protest getting organized actually on TikTok, which is a place where there's a lot of actual democratic organizing, which seems to be lost on the Democrats in Congress right now. But Autumn, what was your inspiration for Project Caerus, and what if you could talk a little bit about what it's been like in Florida? You know, it's hard to imagine from a very liberal area in California where, you know, being trans is not a big deal, at least not in my world at all, or for my kids or in their schools. Can you tell us tell us your story a little bit, like where were you when this started happening? And what inspired you? Because I think you told me at one point that you could leave and go to Oregon, but you decided to stay and fight this fight instead.
Yeah, so a while ago, about 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, I originally had this dream, okay? And it sounds really funny, but it's true. I went to sleep and I had a dream that I organized a walkout at my school. And it was about this very issue, and it inspired me. And I've always been very passionate about activism and actually making a change in my community. Originally, Project Caerus was about food insecurity, and I did raise food and I did donate it to a local organization in my town. And I got inspired from my JRTC program, which actually kind of made me the person that I am today, because without them, I wouldn't really be doing this because of all of the support I've been getting, a lot of mentoring. And
what was that organization that you mentioned?
It was a local community organization called Community Cooperative, I
Okay.
believe. Yeah, and we worked with them in the past before with JRTC, and it was nice, and we were able to distribute food and stuff like that. So that really inspired me. And as someone who's trans and as someone who lives in Florida, obviously these issues mean a lot to me and my community, and I want to stay here and fight, even though it's a lot of work and it's very draining. I will be honest, but it is very, very worth it. And the atmosphere in Florida it's very high right now, especially with our governor Ron DeSantis trying to pass these bills as fast as possible, trying to hurt our trans youth and our LGBTQ plus community. And it can get hard going to school, trying to make sure that your teachers are using your correct pronouns. At my school, my teachers support me, but very soon they might actually be legally only allowed to use my legal name and my pronouns that I was assigned with at birth.
That's right. I mean, we're going to get into some of the legislation that's been coming down from the governor's office, including a ban on using preferred pronouns in schools up to, I believe, grade 8, from K to 8. And there's so much more happening in terms of legislation that is being replicated across the country in Republican-led state legislatures. Now, Autumn, like, for example, are your parents supportive of you being trans, or your guardians?
Oh yeah, my entire family is very supportive.
Okay. And under some laws, I just want to share this with people. If a parent is supportive of a trans youth transitioning even out of state or getting hormone therapy, even out of state, they can, one of the proposed laws in Florida is that they could lose custody of their child for that. Autumn, also, you are, I think, in high school. Is that right? How old are you?
I'm 17.
You're 17. So these laws would apply to you because they apply to individuals under the age of 18, from what I understand.
Yes, it's very scary. As my parents, they're also pretty worried about this as well.
Yeah.
And just living in Florida in general can be very, very tough on your mental health, especially knowing that you can be stripped away from your parent, you can be taken away and basically legally kidnapped, if you want to put it like that. But it's extremely scary that so many trans youth are going to be in jeopardy of losing their support group, and it's going to be a total disaster for their mental health, as well as the suicide rate for trans youth in Florida.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to go to Liam now. Liam Borg, welcome. You're the vice president of Project Caerus, from what I understand. Project Caerus means, Caerus is the god of hope, the Greek god of hope, from what Autumn has told me. And Liam, can you talk about, what school do you go to, if you want to say? You don't have to say. And what age are you? And how did you get involved with Project Caerus?
So, sure thing. So, first off, I'm 18 as of, sometime this month. I'm not very good at dates, but I turned 18 on the 4th. I believe it is the 27th. So I do want to correct you actually on something that you said.
Yeah.
A lot of this does only affect students under 18. That's not the case for most of this. For instance, the Don't Say Gay bill. There's a common misconception that only affects people under 3rd grade. And then above that, there's a misconception that it only somewhat, in quotes, affects people like above 3rd grade and under 18. However, that's still not entirely the case. I am out to my parents. I'm not trans, but I am pansexual, meaning that I am attracted to people regardless of gender. If I was not out to my parents, and any teachers that knew that I am not straight, or that I consider myself not straight, could be required under law to submit this information to my parents, per se. And I mean, when I came out, it didn't go exactly as I planned. I was somewhat coerced into it. And that's something that I wish upon no child. I go to Bonita Springs High School over in Florida. I'm a dual enrolled student, so I also attend Florida Gulf Coast University, and I'm applying to the University of Central Florida. A big thing that I've learned is that a lot of this legislation impacts universities too.
Yeah.
Of course, for privacy and for legal reasons, I will not provide a name. However, I had a professor once, a history professor, who had to tell the class, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, but essentially, I'm sorry if any of this information that I'm telling you is not legal. The Stop Woke Act, per se, was submitted about a week before classes started. This professor did not have the time to go through all this information, and she straight up said to us, I'm not going to lie to you. My job is to teach you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to tell you that racial discrimination is not happening, that homophobia is not happening, that transphobia is not happening. I'm not going to tell you that these things are not systemic, because we have proof that these things are systemic. This is something that I've seen through, I think, all levels of my schooling, is not just the very official stuff, the stuff that really scary, but also the curricular stuff, and with stuff like the Don't Say Gay Act, Don't Say Gay and Trans, if you will, Act, I will tell anyone willing to listen to me that, very unfortunately, the suicide rates in Florida are most surely going to skyrocket. Although I'm a political science major, I've taught children for several years. I attribute almost everything that I've done to a martial arts academy near me. I've donated several hundred hours just to that academy alone, and about 1,000 hours overall, through politics and education, most namely. And I've taught children as young as, I believe, 8, who identified as something other than cisgender or heterosexual.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, at first I was concerned about that.
Yeah.
I thought, hey, if you're 8 years old, this individual is non-binary. I'm like, how do you know that? Could that be something that is concerning?
Right.
And of course, I'm not one to harass my students per se. I try to be a very understanding teacher. So I tried to talk this through with them, try to understand where they're coming from, not to be passive aggressive or not to make it sound wrong to them, but just to understand what's going on. And I can tell you for sure that after that conversation, I realized that they knew the only thing concerning about this is that I know 18-year-olds who are less sure of their identity than this child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, Liam, let me just interrupt for 1 second, because we do have to take a station break and let everybody know that they are listening to KSQD, K-Squid, 90.7 FM in Santa Cruz, live streaming at ksqd.org. We are talking with Autumn Person and Liam Borg, who are two young people organizing marches throughout the state of Florida in conjunction with a larger organization, Autumn, which the name of which is, I didn't write that down,
Queer Youth Assemble.
Queer Youth Assemble, who is actually organizing marches throughout the nation on March 31st to push back against all the, literally like the waterfall of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation happening in the United States right now in red states and red legislatures. Let's get into the bills just a little bit. I'm going to just summarize them, and you guys can fill in the things that I don't say, because these are the kinds of bills that are coming out of Florida, Texas. They're being replicated in states like Ohio, in states like South Carolina. And I think maybe most of our listeners have seen all of this coming out. I'm not sure if people are tracking it, if they are not actually LGBTQ plus as closely as you all might be and other people who are affected. In Florida, we have HB 254, which completely bans gender-affirming care for minors. This is the one that also allows for the courts to decide to remove custody of any trans youth from parents who might try to support them in their medical treatment and in their transitioning. That even in another state, even if you took your child to another state to get this kind of medical care, you could still lose your child coming back to the state. HB 1223, which bans the use of preferred pronouns and the teaching of sexual orientation of any kind and identity, sexual identity in K through 8. and I'm going to quote from the legislation itself, it is false to ascribe a personal pronoun that does not correspond to the person's sex. That is the basis for HB 1223. And then there's the horrifying HB 999, which bans all studies of gender and sexuality throughout the college level, university level curriculum in the state of Florida. I believe just in state funded schools. Is that correct? Hello, you guys there?
Yeah, sorry. I believe that is correct.
Okay. And it bans the idea itself that people can be discriminated against based on their identity. That is not allowed. Basically, it's the state university boards coming in to oversee the state universities and make sure that what's being banned is any discussion of critical race theory, any program that is based on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and any programs or campus activities, which includes, from what I understand, and you all can jump in here, if there's a black sorority, a black fraternity, a club for LGBTQ plus individuals. It's an indigenous club. Is that right?
Yes.
Sort of. Can I make a comment on this if you don't mind, Amy?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you're here.
So what they've been trying to do since the Stop Woke Act, according to universities themselves and according to their general counsels, is they're trying to expand the definition of discrimination so that discrimination can include white people, and it can include men, it can include cisgender people, heterosexual people, basically the majority. And of course, that doesn't necessarily sound all that awful to people who don't quite understand what that means, but in practice, that can be used to kind of legislate discrimination while saying it's this anti-discrimination kind of practice, right? So what they end up doing is they say that you can't have a safe space, or you can't have like you said, you can't have these specific sororities, these black sororities, or a Hispanic sorority or fraternity. But something that I'd like to know is that in some of the texting of the words of these bills, it could also threaten the idea of a sorority or a fraternity, because they're already, for lack of better words, I guess, gender segregated, right?
Oh, you mean the whole idea of a fraternity or a sorority that is female or male?
Yes, and when they talk about, like, you can't talk about these ideas of gender or gender expression or whatever, I think that a lot of people don't realize is that's not just transgender people. They want you to stop talking about women's rights. They want you to stop talking about these pro-choice subjects. They want you to stop talking about anything relating to it. And unfortunately, to a lot of these evangelical, per se, women, right, these cisgender women, they don't see that as a bad thing. They see this as protecting women, when in all fairness, it is directly targeting them. And I think I want people to realize that too.
Yeah, I think that it bans actually like women's studies or Jewish studies, any kind of study of someone's identity. And the idea that how I was reading the legislation, I might not have read it right, that people can be discriminated against based on these identities. I mean, it's just so, it's like Florida's now in some other universe from so many other states that, like the state that I live in, California. Yeah, go
Absolutely.
ahead. Yeah.
It is absolutely mind-boggling. In fact, when the Don't Say Gay and Trans Act came out, I would tell people, right, this is written like it's written by a kindergartner. It is about 3 pages long, and it's very easy to understand. It is not this huge thing like they've done before where they try to sneak things in, right?
Yeah.
There's a specific word for that, but excuse me for forgetting the nomenclature. But it is very blunt about what it's doing. And I highly recommend to anyone who is thinking like, oh, well, they can't possibly be just openly discriminating. I highly recommend that people read these bills.
Yeah, and
they're very easy to understand.
You can find them at Project Caerus has a web page that links directly to the bills where you can get the full text of the bills, and they're not actually that long. I was able to read through most of the bills before this radio show. I also found some very interesting little bits and pieces in these bills, and particularly in HB 999, which relates to higher education. One of the things that they added was a study of an emphasis on a study of individual achievement and entrepreneurial vision. Having forums based on individual achievement and entrepreneurial vision is encouraged. What is not encouraged is government, politics, policy, or journalism. The other thing that was in HB 999, nothing contrary to the creation of a new nation based on universal principles stated in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence shall be taught. So that means, I'm assuming, we don't get to talk about the indigenous nations that were here when white settlers first showed up. And then also we will have engagement with the Western, specifically literary tradition. This is all in HB 999. Autumn, what are you seeing in terms of people coming out for this march and rally? Is it all about LGBTQ plus? Is it sort of an open? Is it everyone coming out to support you? Is it people concerned about other issues? What are you seeing in terms of energy and momentum for this march on the 31st of this month?
Well, so far what we've been seeing a lot of support. So we will be seeing a lot of people who do support our cause, but we're also seeing a lot of people who care about this specific cause. It's mainly about LGBTQ plus issues,
right?
But people who do actually support us in these protests, the people can actually hop on and not only support our cause, but they can also protest for HB 999 as well, like how it'll affect different education, how you can't talk about certain topics like indigenous and stuff, and that not only affects us, the LGBTQ plus community, but it also affects basically every minority in Florida. So mainly the protest is only about LGBT plus issues, but It is nice knowing that there are people who support us, who do care about us, and who actually want to protest with us and basically support us when we're out there protesting at these schools. And I wouldn't really call it a broad topic, but if people want to make it a broad topic, they definitely can, and I welcome them to join us as well, because I've been seeing a lot of different messages on TikTok and on Instagram, people saying like, hey, I'm a parent, can I join, and different things like this. Oh yeah, absolutely. Everyone is welcome to protest, regardless of how old you are, regardless of where you are. We're actually currently working on a map right now, and these protests that we're trying to organize, not only is it statewide, but we've been seeing people who want to organize outside of the state, and we've been helping them organize as well.
Okay, and this is all at projectcaerus.org?
Yes.
Okay, and that's Project Caerus is CAERUS.org. There's a place where there's a map, but the map isn't quite up yet. When will that map be up, Autumn?
It should be up by the end of tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, great. So it's coming up soon, and we're going to see where all the different protests are happening and where you can be at a certain time to join in for the protest. How does it feel and also, so what I'm hearing you say is really this is about anti-LGBTQ plus legislation. That's really the focus of these marches. There's so much to march about, but let's really support this particular community right now, because as far as I'm concerned, transgender people are the most under threat in this country at this time. And I fear for people's safety. I've seen pictures of like Nazi, the Nazi swastika, during the playoff games in Florida. It was beamed up onto a building. I've seen in Ohio actual Nazi groups showing up at drag shows with huge banners, flying with the swastika. They've been showing up at when there are women who are like sort of pro women's rights. I think people call them TERFs. Speaking in Australia, for example, Nazis are showing up to support them. Is it scary? I mean, does it feel like there could be danger, physical danger at these protests, or how does that feel to the two of you?
Oh, for sure. I do feel some sort of like I am pretty nervous about protesting. I am scared of people like physically assaulting us or verbally assaulting us. Not so much verbally, because I will be honest, I could care less what other people think. But I'm more worried about the other youth that are in our state as well,
Yeah.
who live in other counties or who live in other states where it's much more heavily conservative, and people do actually fly those Nazi flags there, and it's scary for them because I have gotten messages saying how like they're scared to actually protest. As a matter of fact, someone actually reached out to me and they want to start a GSA at their school, and we're trying to help them do that, but their school is heavily conservative and someone tried to in the past but they couldn't get it going, and a lot of students there are very, very conservative, and a lot of people fear for their safety, and we completely understand, but we need to realize that there's more of us than them. And I don't want to really make it a us versus them kind of mentality. We need to approach this with a mature mindset, but it seems like they're trying to make it them versus us, and we're trying to actually fight for human rights, and we want to make a difference as young people. And as like I could use an example like that Congress hearing about TikTok being banned, and they were talking to the CEO. There's a lot of old people in office, and they don't
That's
tend
for
to listen.
sure.
It's true. They don't listen to the youth.
I
They
know.
they kind of just go off of what's being given to them, which is money, and it's sad. And
Yeah.
as youth, we're understanding and we're growing up, and we're realizing that hey, this isn't the country that we want to live in. This isn't the country we want to raise our future children in, and it's scary. And we want to stay here and make a difference, regardless of how tough it is, because we know that we can push through it. We can fight it. It's happened before. They never win. Never in history do they win.
All right. Well, we're going to circle back to what you're saying about in history they never win. We're going to go to a short break here. You're listening to KSQD 90.7 FM in the Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay areas, live streaming at ksqd.org. Your squid on the dial. And you are listening to Moment of Truth. We have usurped, unfortunately, Peace Talks, which is a wonderful program, but that's because we have a very important event coming up, which is Trans Visibility Day on March the 31st. And we are talking to two very brave, courageous, and smart young people in Florida, one of whom is trans, one of whom is pansexual, who are very intent on stopping the anti-LGBTQ plus flood of legislation that's happening in Florida. And Autumn, you were just saying before the break that you feel somewhat optimistic, you feel hopeful. And that's amazing, because I just want to say that watching comments on being on TikTok, and you all know, I think, because you're both on TikTok, people laugh about TikTok, but I've been on now for a few months since December, and I cannot tell you how many people I have heard who are trans living in states that are passing this legislation that are in tears, that are weeping, that are frightened, and all the thousands of people who are now talking about how do I get out, which is a privileged thing to be talking about because a lot of people don't have the funds to get out of these states. I mean, this is scary. This feels like, Third Reich kind of stuff when people are like, how do I get out of my state to be safe from the government? Autumn, you seem hopeful nonetheless. So tell me, where does your hope come from? You had this amazing dream. What happened in your dream? That it was a protest? Like protests, people don't always think, oh, that's a lovely, wonderful feeling being at a protest. I tend to think that way because I'm a protester myself. But can you tell me what happened in the dream and why you feel hopeful?
In the dream, I was protesting with friends, and I just had this passion of wanting to help people, wanting to really make a change in my entire state. So having that dream really made me feel hopeful, because in the past, and as what we were talking about before, in history as well with the civil rights movement, and as a really great example, we know that we can win. A lot of people have gained their rights in the past with women, with people who are of color, and different things like that. And I have plenty of hope. We have so many people in Florida who can't get out, and it's very sad, but it brings me hope because we need to fight this. And on Twitter, actually, I did reply to someone who said how they were feeling very hopeless with them being trans, and they were asking if it gets better. And it was a random account. I didn't know them, and I replied saying like how actually yes, it does get better. As someone who's been out for 2 years, it does get better with time. It really sucked at first, I will be honest, but I have hope because I've gotten better myself. I've come very close to feeling extremely terrible and almost wanting to give up on all the things that I love. And I'm very glad I didn't, because now I have a chance to fight and use my passion, use all of this time that I was being discriminated against, using all of this time to really push back that legislation and really make a big difference, because the entire premise of Project Caerus is to bring hope to people all across Florida and even across the nation, as it's what it's looking like now with support from everywhere. We're getting donations from all across the nation and even outside of this country. We recently got a donation from the UK, so it really shows everyone that we have supporters all over the globe, and we're very strong. We have a lot of support, and I'm extremely hopeful towards the future.
That's
we actually got multiple from the UK.
Multiple donations. Yeah, you can actually go and donate at projectcaerus.org to help support this anti-LGBTQ plus legislation, a pushback from young people and students all across the state of Florida, including marches that are happening throughout the nation. We'll give you more information at the end of the show. I did want to mention, if you want to call in and talk to these guests that we have from Florida fighting against this legislation. Liam, how do you feel? Are you feeling as hopeful and strong as Autumn? I'm always amazed when I talk to Autumn at how hopeful and strong she feels.
I'm equally as amazed. I will be honest, though, with you, Amy, is I'm a lot less hopeful. Honestly, I am livid, to put it on words that I can say on air. No, I am very upset with what's happening right now. And as I understand it, these things are not going to stop happening, especially not overnight. We can protest, but I mean, historically, in these ever since the Vietnam protest, which I would say are our last great protests per se, the United States has not been nearly as effective with protesting as other countries have. You look at France, for instance.
Right now.
Yes. And when we protest, one of our big things is we have a big issue with police brutality. We have big issues with violence in protests, with gun violence especially, and some of which is from the police, unfortunately. And we are trying to avoid all these safety concerns. Project Caerus, unfortunately, we might have to rely upon police presence at some of these. We will try to hire officers if possible and where needed. And I'm not very happy that we have to do so, not just because of the threat of violence, but because, of course, relying on an institution that historically dissipates protests and that is against protesters is not something that I'm very proud of. But our number one concern is protester safety. And in general, we cannot afford to lose. This is something that I don't think a lot of people understand, is what I like to call the unaffecteds per se, right? You have these elderly, white, cisgender people that run like the Democratic Party down in Florida, and especially down in where we live in Lee County. And of course, I have no issues with them. They're still doing the good work. But at the end of the day, they're not going to be affected by these nearly as much as the rest of us, right? They're not going to understand that they can't live a certain way, that they can't love who they love or be who they are, or all these things. And this is something that it is very personal for us. I mentioned this earlier. If things keep going the way they are going, the teen suicide rate in Florida will skyrocket. I can guarantee you that, and I hate to say that. That being said, we're trying to stop this. We're trying as hard as we can, but Florida is a red state now. We are not a swing state. I want to make that very clear. We are not a swing state. This is not something where we can win this back in 2024. This is something where we will be fighting in 2024 and 2028 and 2030 and 2032. Like, we will keep fighting this.
Yeah.
And that might not be Project Caerus. That might be some other organization. That might be several organizations for different issues. But that is not a fight that is going to end anytime soon, and we are not backing down.
I just want to note that the group called Moms for Liberty, which now has something in the neighborhood of, I have heard, and I was not able to confirm this before the show, but something like 200,000 members across the country, actually originated in Florida. It was a woman named Tina and a woman named Tiffany and a woman who lost her seat on the school board, I believe, who started Moms for Liberty. This is the group that is going around the country trying to run for school boards and harassing school boards to ban books about LGBTQ plus youth, about sexual identity, about hard things that happen to kids. Like they're picking up books where kids might be abused in the book, which would be very meaningful for a kid who is actually being abused to read, to understand that this happens to more than just them, right? And they're trying to ban all these books. It's really a Christian nationalist project. And there is a group, I just wanted to note that there's a group called Defense of Democracy that is trying to show up and counter the Moms for Liberty groups that are also starting to happen in California. I was just watching, again, on TikTok, a hearing involving Moms for Liberty moms in a county in California, which I have a hard time saying. I think it's Temecula. And so they're there. They're just everywhere at this point. So if you're interested in helping to fight this fight, check out Defense of Democracy. These are also mothers who are trying to make sure that our schools remain inclusive and for every student out there. Do you guys have any thoughts about Moms for Liberty? I mean, this Florida just seems like this place where these really bad ideas are emerging. I used to live there. I went to high school in Florida, actually, and junior high school, and I don't remember any of this kind of thing going on. I wasn't in the north part or in the Panhandle. I was down in Dade County, which tends to be a little more liberal and democratic. But what do you think happened in Florida?
Ron DeSantis happened, but frankly.
But was there a build-up to that, to Ron DeSantis, or what created Ron DeSantis? Do you know? I mean, I'm not expecting you to necessarily know. So what you have,
per se, right, in a political environment is people who are more progressive, right, or more conservative, right, like on the, if you will, the fringes. I don't like to call it that, but for lack of better words, they organize a lot better than centrists or than your average liberals and conservatives, right? Which means that they can win primaries a lot easier. You see this a lot in areas with a very large liberal base or a very large conservative base. The reason that you get these hardcore people, right, is because you get they can win the primary, right? And so when you have a swing state like Florida used to be from like, the early 2000s or even the 2010s, normally you can get people that aren't awful, or you can get people that are quite horrendous, like Rick Scott, like Marco Rubio has recently become, or like DeSantis. And
or Matt Gaetz is in Florida too, is that right?
Or Matt Gaetz,
I think
of course,
he's in
yes.
In the Panhandle.
He's in the Panhandle. Mm-hmm. He is in Northwest Florida, I believe. And when you get someone like DeSantis, what you get is someone that loud is very, very good at getting attention, right? Put frankly, and he's able to get or national attention, right? And he's able to get conservatives from liberal states like California or New York or wherever. He's able to get them to move here, right? Which kind of creates that conservative base because he makes it look more conservative than it is. And I mean, it's kind of this fake it till you make it scenario, right? And now in the 2022 election, he won in a landslide, nothing short of. And a lot of people were talking like, well, is that an outlier? Is this something that we'll ever see again? And unfortunately, that is something that we'll see again. That is not an outlier. What that is a transformation that he helped shape. Of course, we can't shape it back, but it's quite hard,
Yeah. Well, and the other thing about Florida is you have Mar-a-Lago. You have Palm Beach, West Palm Beach. You have You have all of these very conservative Hispanic groups from like refugees from Cuba a long, long time ago who are still very sort of anti-socialist, anti-communist because of their experience with Fidel Castro. You have dictators from Latin America and from Haiti. You know, you have the Tonton Macoute that were the secret police, like living now in Dade County. It's a strange state. I always remember thinking that when I lived there, like, this is a very strange state. It's a cauldron of all kinds of people. And in this podcast I listen to quite often, Gaslit Nation, they talk about how much Russian mafia is there. They sort of are in New York. That's a hotbed for the Russian mafia. And of course, they're funding all kinds of Congress people and getting involved with all kinds of, legislation or pushing for things. And they pushed for our last president. And also they're in Florida. I don't know if you guys know anything about this, but I just had to throw that in. Any other comments about what you see making up the state and why it's become this sort of hotbed of right wing reactionary? I'm gonna say neo-fascist politics.
It is. No, definitely. One thing I do want to mention is Florida has been a lot more conservative ever since Trump came into office. He built a huge fan base here in Florida, and I mean huge.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's just a kind of something that gets in the atmosphere, right, when you have leadership at that level. I was thinking about this study about teen mental health that you guys probably saw coming out from the CDC, and how especially girls, and they didn't mention much LGBTQ plus youth, but I think they were also studied, their mental health is on the decline. And one of the things that happening is an increase in sexual violence against girls, and I'm assuming also against members of the LGBTQ plus community, young community. And I thought, well, how come we're not talking about that? Yeah, and I feel like that's part of what we're seeing at leadership levels in this nation, kind of like a toxic masculinity. Liam, go ahead.
Yes, no, that absolutely is. And of course, just to clarify, I'm a cisgender male and I have very little to put in this subject. However, I do want to just clarify that there is plenty of sexual harassment towards men as well. And we need to realize all of this. We cannot have victim blaming at all. I'm sure everyone knows the Johnny Depp trial, right? Sexual harassment and sexual violence is much more common against women, and especially trans women, actually. But we need to recognize exactly what happens to this. And something that I'm a very big proponent for is sexual education, and inclusive sexual education. This is something that we don't have in Florida. We're supposed to have a health class. Personally, I never took it. In fact, I was excluded from it, likely because of a conflict with the teacher. She didn't like me very much. It was mutual, though. And this is a big thing, is I learned sexual education. I'm not sure exactly what I can say on air, so I'm trying to be careful here. I learned it from a friend, from multiple friends, in fact. And that is something that can be very dangerous sometimes. Now, I'll hand this over to Autumn, of course, because I'm sure that she has a lot more that she can say.
And that's probably something that Moms for Liberty is wanting to stop is sex education in the schools.
Oh, yes.
And
they're very against liberty, ironically.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I want to say that you are listening to KSQD 90.7 FM in the Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay areas, also live streaming at ksqd.org. We are talking with Autumn Person and Liam Borg, who are two young people in Florida who are organizing marches all across the state on Trans Visibility Day, March the 31st. You can go to their website at Project Caerus, CAERUS.org, and donate to them and support the cause. Register your own march, whether it's in Florida or elsewhere. Autumn, did you want to speak a little bit about teen mental health and sexual violence being on the rise in the United States against young people?
Oh, for sure. I have experienced some sexual harassment at school before, and I also have seen it firsthand. One thing I do like to mention in Florida, and I'm sure you're aware, if not, is that this will be very interesting. But in Florida, by law, schools are required to do this thing called it's Wellness Wednesday, where every first Wednesday of every month, the schools are required to pull up this video, and there's this whole curriculum about mental health, and you'll have people talking about mental health, and what they'll do is they'll shorten school days so you have more time at the end of your school day, which is my 7th period class, and they would talk about mental health, and the way they present it is terrible. The advice they give is terrible. On top of that, they're not inclusive at all, and I'm very sure Liam has a lot to say about this as well. Every student in Florida,
awful.
It is. We hate Wellness Wednesday. It doesn't actually address any of the issues.
Oh my
at all.
God, we hate Wellness Wednesday.
Yeah,
That's something we hate.
Very ironically.
It should be something that you love and that soothes you and helps you and supports you. Well,
No,
what
it's
are
not
they?
supportive.
Yeah, why? What are they saying about wellness that is not supportive?
So, Autumn, can I comment a little bit maybe?
Oh yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, so personally, unfortunately, I've had a lot of friends, and I've even had partners who have attempted suicide or who have self-harmed. Of course, I try to help them as much as possible. I have talked down people several times. I've only attended a few Wellness Wednesdays because my first year of high school was at a charter school. I like to call it a nerd school because it was not your typical charter school. My second year was largely online due to COVID. And then, of course, I'm dual enrolled, but I did go to a few Wellness Wednesdays, and something I realized is they would give very normative traditional beliefs, and what they would do is they would hire these quote-unquote celebrities, right? And they would try to make them sound cool to kids, which I'm sure if you've ever seen an adult try to do, it's not very good. It doesn't tend to go very well.
What can you tell me what a normative belief would be, or to give us an example
Sure.
so we can relate?
So these normative beliefs could, of course, I don't know exactly what curriculum they're leading on. However, a lot of these normative beliefs tend to kind of say that like suicide is not something that they address very directly, at least. It's not something that you would hear. It's not something that you're exactly encouraged to talk about, right?
Okay,
or
so
you're
it's-
encouraged to
yeah.
talk about it with like your parents, for instance, right? And something that I don't think they realize is
Right. Talk about it with your parents when
not
they
all parents are good parents.
Exactly. Wow. This really.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. No. I interrupted you. I'm just. It's upsetting to me because I'm actually a mental health educator, and I wrote a book about what schools need for kids to thrive and to even achieve academic success, and what's most needed across all studies. Meta-analyses of all studies across schools around the world is a feeling of safety, caring, and connectedness, right? So this
That
is
does
why
not exist.
in a lot of our schools we have programs that are about social emotional learning, right? Let's talk about our feelings. Let's talk about feeling suicidal. Let's bring it all up. Now, interestingly, you may have seen on TikTok, Walter Masterson interviewed a Mom for Liberty, and their next target, not just this book banning and what they call queer theory and critical race theory, which is not taught in K through 12 schools anyway. She was talking about, you know what the gateway is for all these other terrible, terrible things like CRT, social emotional learning. So they're coming for that.
I'd actually like to make a correction. DeSantis has put in some bans for social emotional learning and has actually rejected several textbooks at the high school level and lower due to an inclusion of, quote, social emotional learning.
Exactly.
That is what he said amongst the 52 math textbooks that he denied, is apparently they were too woke and included social emotional learning and some even critical race theory, which you gotta wonder what's in the Florida air sometimes.
I know. I mean, I think really what it comes down to is that Christian parents want their kids to be Christian and stay in the conservative, like their field, right? And that means to coming to them to talk about being gay or being trans. But how can you do that? Or suicidal thoughts when your parents aren't going to listen to you or accept you as you are because of their belief system. And that's the piece I see again and again is parents like who don't understand that they can actually be the ones pushing their children away from them want to maintain control. And I want to ask you guys about TikTok. We don't have a lot of time, but I just think it's important because I saw such a huge pushback to the congressional hearings on TikTok, which everyone on TikTok was watching on TikTok, right? And how many young people were just up in arms about what they saw as sort of a unified, Meta-sponsored, bipartisan attack on Mr. Chu, the CEO of TikTok. And I say
terrible.
this, yeah, and I want to ask you guys how, but I just say it because I've learned so much there about everything that young people are going through. I've learned so much. Autumn, go ahead. Tell us what you think about that.
I was actually watching one of the lives with the congregational hearing, and in the comments during the live, I saw so much support for TikTok not being banned, and a lot of people were really giving it to Congress. They were just saying like how stupid they are, and just a lot of profanity and this and that. But it was it was ridiculous, and honestly,
Yeah.
they have every right to be upset because I was just as upset as them. It was a ridiculous thing to watch. They barely let Mr. Chu speak at all. All they did was attack him. And the funny thing is, before that hearing, that everyone in that room actually bought stocks in Meta before that happened. Just
I
thought
know
should
that
put
they
out
have a
there.
website. This is what it's like. Congress people, please get on TikTok before you start talking about it, because they're putting out, okay, this is how much Anna Eshoo has invested in Meta in the last few months. And they're listing every single congressperson who is in that committee and how much they're invested in Meta. I mean, it's not a dumb place. It's a very smart place with a lot of expert people talking about things. Liam, do you have a thought? I don't know if you're on TikTok or not. I know that Project Caerus is, because that's where I found you guys.
So Project Caerus is on TikTok. That is my actual main interaction with TikTok. I don't have a personal TikTok. I did at one point. It's not that I'm concerned about security or safety or anything. I mean, hell, you can find pretty much all information about me online. I've given up on that. But
Yeah, right.
that being said, I mean, I watched some clips from the congressional hearing. Unfortunately, I was not able to watch the entire thing. And what I've saw is there's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of these conspiracy theories that they're trying to throw out, that they try to get the CEO of TikTok to agree with. They just are so convinced of it. In specific, I saw Representative Kat Kamek from Florida. Excuse me if I'm mispronouncing her name. She discussed a lot of these things about these conspiracies of, oh, well, doesn't the CCP have a share in TikTok? Or aren't they required to have a CCP member as the, or CCP like party member per se, like someone working there on the board of TikTok or its parent company? And these kept being refuted. However, they kept going on as if these were true facts. And
I know, she
want to be very clear.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you finish.
Yeah, I want to be very clear that not just is this a potentially racist kind of thing, but it's also, it is intended to silence youth voices, because they know that people like us, we don't want people like them. We don't want people that don't really know these things. We don't want people that are spewing conspiracy theories. We don't want people that are going and buying stocks right before a hearing, right? They know that what we want and what they want are much different. They're scared of us. I think everyone should know that.
Yeah, and that is the predominant view. I mean, whether you agree or disagree, 150 million users of TikTok in the United States are extremely upset. And I am just following all this, like, what is going to happen next? Because these people are calling their legislators. They are calling the White House. They're ready to hit the streets. I mean, it is on fire right now. They've lit a fuse on a whole bunch of people. And I just want to say, as a Chinese person, it was so hard to watch how they treated Mr. Chu. I could not believe it. I called Anna Eshoo 3 times. Myself.
Yeah, it was. I actually would like to apologize to you for having to witness that.
Thank you, Liam.
Because I understand that is horrifying to have to watch something like that and know that they're not interested in security, right? They know that there's no security threat. What they're interested in is, according to these people, according to these neoconservatives and these neoliberals, right? just anything from China is immediately bad, right? And don't get me wrong, there's many issues with the Chinese government. There's many issues with what's going on in China. But to just say that anything from China is bad is fallacious, just to be
Yeah, kind of. It was kind of red baiting. And you know what? There is legislation that they're considering. It's called Resist. You can look it up. I can't remember. I think it's 686 is the bill, Senate Bill 686. It actually involves a lot of different foreign countries. There's more to this. There's a lot of nuance. There are a lot of things to think about. But just the sheer disrespect, I think, was what overwhelmed the TikTok audience about the hearings, and just the ignorance and disrespect. I want to go back to what you guys are doing, though. Autumn Person, because we have like a minute left, and Liam Borg, both with Project Caerus, CAERUS.org in Florida, organizing mass march outs in Florida for March 31st, Trans Visibility Day. Really quickly, in 30 seconds or less, do you have a message, Autumn? I'm going to end it with you, to trans youth, gay youth, queer youth out there who might be feeling scared. What is your message, and what can they do for this march?
My message to everyone and the entire community is not give hope. I mean, don't give up, have hope. They want you to lose. They want you to give up hope. They want you to leave Florida. They basically just want you to basically lose hope. And I could go on a big tangent, a huge speech about having hope and this and that, but down to the point, all I want to say is do not give up. Please do not give up. If you need to talk to someone, me and Liam are here. Okay, we love receiving emails and we love responding to them. Please email us if you need any help at all with anything. We love everyone.
Okay, and that is
Yes.
at Project Caerus.
No, don't worry. I was just actually saying yes and
Yes.
agreeing to that. But first off, I meant fallacious, not fallacial. But also, no, absolutely. Organize like hell. That's all I gotta say. And unfortunately, if we don't do this, then, well,
We're in big
Germany's
trouble.
accepting refugees from the United States. So
Yeah, right, exactly.
learn German, I guess.
Yeah, right. Okay,
I
so
hate to say that.
Project Caerus, I also want to give a shout out to the Diversity Center here in the Santa Cruz area. If you are a trans youth looking for support, and queer youth, gay youth, LGBTQ plus of any kind, go to the diversitycenter.org. I tried to get someone on the show, but this show happened very last minute. Thank you so much, Autumn and Liam, for joining us. I'm going to be watching very closely. I'm hoping people are going to live stream that march. Hope for Florida. Project Caerus, thank you so much.